Hey guys, welcome back. So today's discussion is going to be about the FiiO DM13 CD player. Before I start this discussion, I would like to recognize Jonathan of Oswald Mills Audio. He did a video about 10 days ago, and I think in that video, he expresses something that I have felt deeply for many years. And I think he really puts into words something that is a major issue and potentially a threat to the music industry. Now, in that video, he talks about this book called Mood Machine by Liz Pelly. And so I'd like to take a minute just to quickly read this sentence here. The now normalized model of an every song in the world subscription service is a functional impossibility without the participation of the major label oligopoly of Universal, Sony, and Warner, who together control 70% of the recorded music market. She goes on to say that at the time Spotify launched, the majors together owned a nearly 18% stake in the company. So what is this book about, and how does this speak to some of the issues going on in the music industry? I have not finished reading this book, but basically what this book does, I think, is it's aimed at blowing the lid off of Spotify. Spotify is not a music platform. Spotify is really positioning themselves as a platform to sell ad revenue on the backs of artists. There's just a lot of nefarious stuff that she goes into on this. Talking about how playlists are being created to promote certain artists, or, the labels and their 20% stake in Spotify essentially brings a situation of consolidation. And obviously, this is just a common theme that we're seeing take place in all art forms. This brings me to my review of the FiiO DM13. And why are people buying this? And I think the reason why I buy vinyl is because I always felt this disconnect with Spotify. I grew up listening to CDs and then transitioned into the iPod, then the MP3, and all of that throughout my life was such an engagement on a physical level. You would burn a CD and you would have to fill up the metadata, and you'd have to, rename all the songs. And there was something about that I think captured this. It just really captured, I don't know. But it's just all encompassing, and it really captures a relationship and a connection to this beautiful art form. And so today, music more than ever before is made for consumption. We're no longer listening to music as a result of what Spotify and so many other streaming services are doing to this art form. Jonathan goes on to describe how one of the biggest issues in the world we face right now is that people no longer will listen. And that transpires into our politics and so many other aspects of our culture. And so, this brings me to this device, the FiiO DM13. I've been watching a lot of these other reviewers and YouTubers online talk about CDs, or I've been seeing these pop up. 10 years ago, our mindset was, well, let's buy vinyl because that's superior. I had listened to CDs, albeit we didn't have CDs, or I should say I didn't have a CD player hooked up to this HiFi system in my life. I grew up on portable CDs, and that really defined the genre for me. So I was really curious to pick this device up. For one, I think it was going to be a nostalgia machine. To be honest with you, I thought this was going to be kind of a gimmick. And that was my concern, right? I'm looking at this as a toy. And it's totally not a toy, guys. This is so much better than I had ever anticipated. And so we'll just dive into build quality. It's an all plastic construction. It's much heavier than I had anticipated. And also at first glance, I really thought that this was kind of like a magnesium or some sort of metal. It's not, it's plastic. The outer window here is not glass, it's actually plastic. On top you have your play, pause, rewind, forward, volume control, and menu buttons. And then on the front here you have 2 headphone jacks, a 3.5 millimeter and a 4.5 millimeter jack. The 3.5 millimeter will do 180 milliwatts into 32 ohms. And then the 4.4 balanced output will do, I believe it's 660 milliwatts into 32 ohms. And then if we go around to the back, there's a balanced out followed by a combination line out coax optical. There's 2 USB-C ports on the back, and one is to power it in desktop mode, and then the other is going to be used to record or burn CDs. This device does have ESP or anti-skip protection. It has a 3,750 milliamp battery. That's pretty cool because it allows you to play this device either in battery mode or in desktop mode. The DAC is a dual CS DAC. I forget the exact chip. I think it's like a 43198 chip, and there's 2 of them in there. One of the things I want to say about the build quality, well, there's a couple things that I'm a little concerned about. One is I wish that this sealed better. If we look at the outer perimeter, there's this air gap around it. And one of the things I worry about is that if you wanted to throw this in a backpack or just a satchel or a bag or something like that, and then play music on the go, I would just worry about like fuzz or dust or things like that getting or falling into the crack. The other thing is that this screen here on the front is like a soft plastic. And just from like the 1 or 2 times I threw it in my bag, I have like a slight ding on it. We become so used to in this world where we have all these like waterproof devices now. And so it would have been nice to see this thing like really be sealed. The open and close button here, it's okay. Eventually that spring could wear out in there. It's just a plastic part. I believe it comes in silver, black, blue, red, or this color, which is like a white with this window on top. I chose the windowed version because one of my ideas was, I thought it would be really cool to mount this on the wall with some double-sided sticky tape and kind of have this like uber minimal CD. And so I want to talk a little bit about use case or with its value proposition. Really, when I got this thing, my thought was this would be a great way to reintroduce myself back into CDs. And, it's kind of an affordable way to do that without breaking the bank. My thought actually when I saw this device was I could power it through this USB cable using my Topping D50. Once I got this device and I pulled it out of the box, within a day, I was like, I have to take this out into the world and test it out. And so that's what I've been doing actually, is I've been taking it to the coffee shop, sitting there working and listening to music. And it's just been so much fun, I think, to be able to sit there and have this physical media. When I compared this experience to listening to Spotify or Tidal, this was just a much better experience for a couple of reasons. Because normally, in this day and age, I listen to music on my Bluetooth Sony headphones when I'm out and about. And for me, it's really about a convenience factor, not so much about like sound quality. As much as I want it to be about sound quality, it's just so much work to lug all this stuff out and about, right? And I guess the other thing I want to say too is I think so much of why we buy physical media, or at least why I buy physical media, is that there is this sense of discovery. And one of the things that I really miss about buying vinyl is, at least when I first got into it, it was more about exploration and it was more about gambling. because we would oftentimes just come home with like 10 records that I had no idea what they were about. I just bought them because the covers were interesting. And so, in so many ways, getting into physical media or vinyl itself was about education and discovery. And so I think today it's just becoming more and more difficult for me to justify buying records like that. Especially now when 20-year-old vinyls are selling for $20, $30, $40. You know, I'm sorry, but I don't want to buy Styx or Journey for $30. And so one of the other things I want to say about this is how great this has been to kind of experience rediscovery again, because I've been going to my record store and Goodwill and places like that, and I'm finding all these great CDs, and it's not like crappy Christmas music, it's not Sing Along with Mitch. This is an extremely affordable way, I think, to find that rediscovery, to find that sense of gamble or whatever, you know. And so this has kind of recaptured my imagination in ways that I had not expected. I did burn some CDs with this, and what I'll say about that is it was kind of confusing at first. You have to read the manual to kind of figure this out, but in order to burn CDs on this, you have to power it through this USB record button, which is like counterintuitive. I don't know why they labeled that. But you power it through there, and then you put the USB flash drive or hard drive or whatever into the power in, and then you switch it to desktop mode. And then what you do is you power it on, and then you hold the power, you power it, and then what you do from there is you power it on and hold the play button until it goes into recording mode. And the downside to that is that it burns them in WAV files with no metadata. So you're going to need to use a piece of software like MP3 tag or something else to actually input the metadata. And then I think if your intention is to possibly be burning many CDs, like one after another, the downfall of this is that it's going to name every single track, basically like track 1 through 10. And then the second CD that you burn, it'll name those tracks, track 01 through track 010. And then the third CD, in a similar fashion, it'll be burned track 001, track 0010. So, possibly that could get really confusing if you're trying to burn a lot. Like you're trying to sit down and say, I want to burn 10 CDs in one session. That could be an issue with this. And so I think if burning CDs is really an important feature for you, there's much better devices out there. Kind of as a bonus feature, I think that's super cool to have. So now, you're probably wondering, how does it sound? I don't have a lot to compare this to, but what I will compare this to is this. This is just your run-of-the-mill, average, late 2000s era Blu-ray players that you can find in abundance at any Goodwill. I think I paid roughly $20, give or take, for this. And so compared to this is so much better than this. Guys, in my opinion, the sound quality of this really blew me away. I was not expecting this to sound as good as it did. One of the albums that I played on this was The Roots' Tipping Point, and that's an album that I have on vinyl. And I did a comparison where I played that on vinyl, on CD, and on streaming services. It was my opinion that the difference between the CD and streaming was very little difference. Now, I should say that both my streamer and this I played through my topping DAC. So some of that, sameness, or whatever you want to call it, is probably being presented to me through my DAC, more or less. When I compare the sound quality of this, or rather the headphone jack on this, to say my Asgard running through a topping DAC, The Asgard with my standalone topping DAC using a streaming service is a better sound. It is more full, it is a larger sound stage, it has more space, more air, all of those characteristics that you're gonna get. The headphones that I was using for this test were my Sundaras and my Sony MDR7506s. In both instances, this powered them perfectly fine. I had no issue here. In fact, I was very surprised that this little device could power my Sundaras. And so, I just took this and my Sundaras to the coffee shop, or I take it out and about. I brought it to the river last weekend, and I just had so much fun being able to go out and about and listen to this physical media. And to me, it was like bringing a mini all-in-one hi-fi system. And really, I think that's kind of a cool value proposition with this device, is that you can take it with you in a portable fashion, and then when you come home, you can plug it back into your rack. And so this is kind of a really great starter device to get into having a physical media. So maybe you're somebody that is streaming, and maybe you're somebody that is feeling this disconnect with the physical media or with the music. And you're looking to remedy that. Because, at least for me, I feel like these streaming services are waging a war on our attention spans. For me, I want to slow down my experience with music. When I was younger, it was always about listening to the most music. I would track all my plays on Last.fm, and I would watch all my Scrabbles, and I would be like, yes, I almost hit, 500,000 whatever, or whatever, plays. And today, I think I want to reshape that experience into every time I sit down and I play music, it's this incredibly special event. And I think that's why I will, at least for now, I will probably always prefer the physical media. Streaming has brought great convenience, but I urge people to be careful, because like so many things in this world, money, power, and greed has the potential to ruin it. If you really love an artist, if you really love an album, buy their CD, support that artist, because these people put their passion and their heart into something that doesn't make them a lot of money. Very few people in this entertainment industry are making money. And it's just a fact of life. I just want to end this discussion by summarizing my thoughts with this. This has been a really fun device for me because it was totally unexpected in how it affected me. I think it brought a sense of nostalgia back to me, but it also taught me that CDs are not as bad as people give them, or they're not as bad as people lead you to believe they are. This still, I think, it still has maybe this digital, or this sense of digitalness, right? But really, I think all that is describing, in my opinion, maybe, is this sense of accuracy, speed, and dynamics. Vinyl is just always going to have this bloom or this sense of warmness to it. Even with my Riga turntable, where I think my Riga turntable produces such a dynamic, maybe even leans a little bit more accurate and digital-like. Yeah, which is why I think this on par, or was practically on par with my record player. Like, it's just, yeah. And I hate to say that because, my record setup cost me over $2,000 versus this, which is a tenth of that. So $200, you can go buy a handful of CDs for less than $5 a pop, and you can get going into this world of physical media. There is so much more that I could talk about probably with this, but as why you should buy this device. That's my experience with it, guys. And if you're somebody looking to reconnect with physical media, you're somebody looking to just start into a CD collection, yeah, go ahead and pick this up. And it's so cool because of this window, right? And there's a lot of different ways you could use it. The last thing I want to say is I really appreciate every one of you guys for watching my videos and subscribing. I was not expecting my channel to gain this amount of traction this quickly. So I just really appreciate each and every one of you. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, because this has been kind of a dream of mine and a passion that I've wanted to start for a long time. So thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.